Hello, marriage champions. I'm Amy Morgan, the feature writer for the San Antonio Marriage Initiative. I am so delighted to have Rick Johnson with us today. He is the founder of Better Dads, a fathering skills program which was recognized in 2012 by the White House as part of the Champions of Change. Rick is the best-selling author of 11 books and has hosted or been a guest on more than 300 radio programs. So he's a pro at being on video with us. Rick's resources encompass a variety of family relationships. Rick, thank you so much for being here with us.
It's my pleasure, Amy.
Oh, well, we are just so glad. Let's start at the beginning. Your ministry is called Better Dads for a reason. Let's talk about that, where that came from, and what you think a father brings to a family.
Sure. Yeah, I grew up in a very dysfunctional home, alcoholic home, very abusive, and didn't have a good role model for a father figure. And so when I grew up, probably like a lot of men, I don't know, when I grew up, I was like, I don't know how to be a father. I don't know even know how to be a husband, and maybe even don't even know how to be a man because I've never had it modeled for me. So, it was something that I recognized pretty early on, and did a lot of work and research and counseling and studying and all kinds of stuff to try to become a better father and husband and man. And when I came to Christ at age 40, I was really praying about what I could do to make a difference in the world. I really been fairly successful at everything I'd ever done, but it was all kind of self-centered. And so, I wanted to make a difference in the world. I wanted to live a life of significance. And, how do you do that? And God really placed on my heart, I believe, that men and especially fathers were the key to all of the problems that our culture faces. And, started a ministry called Better Dads, and, it kind of exploded. The more books I wrote, the more different areas of the family we got involved in, and we do a lot of very interesting, life-impacting things over the years that have really been very gratifying to be a part of.
Well, you talked a little bit about in your fathering program. I think you were mentoring as a little boy, and you tell us about that program and what you found with the presence of a man there.
Sure. Well, we started a program called Standing Tall, which is a mentoring program for fatherless boys. But before that, I was volunteering with an organization called Big Brothers Big Sisters, and I was assigned a 10-year-old boy, and he'd never met his father. His father had been in prison his whole life. So the first time I went to go meet this boy, he lived in this great big huge apartment complex, and so I pulled into this courtyard in the middle of all this, and there was probably 35, 40 kids out there playing. But it was very interesting. Over in the corner were kind of these teenage boys, kind of a gang. They were swearing a lot, smoking dope. There was some kind of scantily clad girls hanging around them, trying to get their attention, looking for masculine affection, I'm sure. And I thought to myself, there's music playing with vulgar lyrics booming out over the whole courtyard. And I thought to myself, how are these little kids, these little 2 and 3 and 4 and 5-year-old kids, going to grow up to live a normal, productive life when this is what they're being exposed to? And I thought, where's the adults? Where's the men? And so when I asked the boy's mom about it, she said, well, there are no men here. It's basically just all single moms in the whole apartment complex trying to raise their kids. And it was such a clear picture of the hopelessness and despair in children's lives, especially when men and fathers are involved. So I came back a couple weeks later, and it was on a Saturday. And when I pulled in the courtyard, same thing, 35, 40 kids out there. But this time there was 4 or 5 guys. I don't know if they were boyfriends of the moms or dads, visiting. But this time, and the guys weren't really doing much. They were just kind of, sitting on the porch talking to them. A couple of them were playing frisbee. But there was no gang of teenage boys swearing. There was no scantily clad girls. There was no vulgar rap music blaring over this courtyard. It literally was like the sun had came out over this courtyard of kids all because a few men had taken the time to use that God-given power of men and fathers that they have to impact the lives of children.
I just thought when you had described that to me, that idea of the ray of sunshine
Mhm.
and the power of a presence. And then you talked about the power of words, not just for fatherhood, but we can touch on that, but also as we transition into the marriage space, because a lot of people who are watching us, they have the opportunity. They're working in the marriage space. This is our heart, and really to see how that power of words from a man and then later from a woman too can just really reach into the hearts of each other.
It is. God's given both men and women a tremendous power. I think women's a little bit more subtle than a man's is. But a man's word, frankly, words don't mean a lot to men generally. We're not big conversationalists. We prefer to judge people by their actions, not by what they say. And again, it's just because words don't mean that much to us. But nevertheless, our words are very powerful, especially with our wives and children. And so, I when I talk to groups of men, I'm all the time. I was like, there's probably a lot of guys in here that have heard things from their father that's stuck in their heart today. You're no good. You'll never amount to anything. You're worthless. And those stay in our hearts our whole lives. And a lot of men spend their time trying to disprove that, and causes a lot of confusion. On the other side, positive affirmations from fathers, hugely, hugely powerful in building up a children. They stay in their heart as well. I think I shared with you before the story and it doesn't even have to be spoken words, it can be written words. The woman who had the clothes hanger with the paper cover on it that she carried her whole life. And when she was a little girl, her dad had wrote, "I love you" on it. And that was her most prized possession throughout her whole life. Um, Elderly people will come up and tell me, the only thing I regret my whole life is that I never heard my dad say he loved me and he was proud of me. That's a huge power that men need to recognize and be able to use that effectively and responsibly.
After you told me that story, we have two grown boys, and they live in Houston, and one of them had called my husband for a reason, and it was just maybe the next day, and I heard my husband saying those words
Mm,
to one of our sons. I don't even remember which one because it wasn't unusual. That's something my husband he's become aware of through resources like yours and many years of marriage and working on things like you have done with your wife as well. But my husband, that's natural for him now
right.
to say those words to our sons, but that may not have been something that he would have thought about before until he had, been impacted by something like
Right.
you have, either a book or a seminar. I know we did some heavy lifting when we were early married through our church programs, and that really made a difference.
Yeah, I was blessed to meet my biological dad when I was 24 years old, I think. And he's just a great man. I mean, I just admire and respect him. And but he's this big stoic guy. He's would never say I love you. But you know what? He's read my books and he's been impacted by that. And he tells me he loves me. He's proud of me. I mean, it's like really healed that wound that I had in my heart. I think that father wound. To have a father be able to come and say that kind of things, even as an adult. So it was a big blessing for me.
If a guy were going to, or a men's group at a church or a ministry or just a group of guys getting together, we're going to choose one of your books to help kind of heal that father wound, where would be the place to start?
I'd probably start with my book, Better Dads, Stronger Sons.
Mm,
And all of my books have free downloadable leader study guides on
that's
our website. So makes it real easy for the leader of a group to get together and do that kind of thing with a group of men.
You also have a seminar, or do you call it a seminar or an event where you are working with dads and their teenage daughters, which is a little different than the daddy daughter dance. Talk
Right.
about that while we're talking about fathers.
Right. Well, there are a lot of daddy daughter dances and they're great, but they're generally geared towards younger daughters. And
Mhm.
so we really wanted to do something for teenage daughters because that's the time period that dads and daughters tend to separate a little bit. Um, but that's when daughters need their dads the most, I think. And so we put together a father-daughter conference, and very, very powerful. It's it gives me goosebumps just talking about it because of the things that we've seen and the changes that have happened in father-daughter relationships over the years.
Could you unpack? You talked to me about one of the exercises that you did with the daughters and the dads. Could you describe that for us?
Yeah, during the conference, we do some sessions together with the daughters and dads and some sessions separate. And so generally my partner will take the girls and have a session. And one of the exercises that he does is he hands out these small little mirrors to each of the girls. And he tells them to look in the mirror for 5 minutes and write down on this card everything that you see. And literally to a girl, it's heartbreaking, but literally to a girl, every one of them writes things like, I'm fat, I'm ugly, I'm unlovable. And those are the things that they feel in their heart. And so we anonymously the things with dads and have them tell them to write cards for their daughters that they give them at lunch to tell them things that they have never been able to say to them, things that they're scared to say to them, but things that they actually need to hear, because our culture instills those kinds of things in girls and women's hearts. And the only person that has the ability to be able to eradicate that and change it to positive is a father. Sometimes husbands later on, but fathers are the key to being able to change a girl's self-image, what she thinks of herself, all those types of things.
So, about that seminar, if someone were wanting to bring that to their church or their ministry, is it online now? Are you on person? How are you doing that?
Well, we haven't done it online. It's always been live events.
Mhm.
I don't think it would be as powerful or impactful if you did it online, certainly. One of the things that we do that is at the end is that we do a father blessing for the daughters. I'll model it. I'll hand my daughter a rose and get down on one knee and tell her the blessing, the father blessing, that I will always be there. I'll always love her, so on and so forth. And then the men in the audience do the same with their daughters, hand them a rose and speak the father blessing over them. It's very powerful, very cheerful event. I don't think you could do that online. So
Well, and that's good because you just moved to Texas and you
yeah,
are centrally located and ready to travel. So people
I am.
can find out how to reach out to you on your website. So we'll have that effort to make it convenient. Well, let's segue a little bit from the fathers and the daughters to how again we can move this into a relationship between a husband and a wife. I know you credit your wife for really being a big influence in your life. Let's talk about maybe your book and some of the things that you've noticed there.
Yeah, two of the best-selling books that I have are how to talk so your husband will listen, which used to be called The Man Whisperer, and my book, which a lot is for small groups, is Becoming Your Spouse's Better Half: Why Differences Make a Marriage Great. And the premise behind that is that we typically opposites tend to attract. So we a lot of times will marry a person with opposite traits that we have. And the problem is then we tend to want to change them to be more like us. But those things, those differences are what attracted us in the first place to each other. But those differences are also what make us a better team. I think the sum of our parts is greater than, or the sum of our parts is greater than us individually.
Let's talk a little bit more about that. That's a great broad brush. Let's dive into some of the nitty gritty.
Okay, so in that particular book, there's 7 chapters for men to read about women, and there's 7 chapters about men for women to read. Generally, the topics coincide with each other, like sex versus romance, those types of things. Generally, men think in modes, more compartmentalized, more logical, maybe. Women tend to be more think in mood, which would be more emotional, things like that. And so the goal is to have the husband and wife read it together and be able to ask each other questions like, is that really the way things are? Is that really how you feel? So, a lot of research was done in that particular book to try to find some ways to bring couples together.
Well, I like that. And I like too your topic about the man whisperer and how a wife can learn to speak in a way that really reaches her husband and touches his heart. I just love that term. And could you tell us a little bit about that? And then I know you had a really good story about something, a time that you presented that at a conference, but unpack it for us first.
Sure. Um, like I said earlier, God has given both genders, both sexes, a tremendous power, and women have a tremendous power to be able to uplift or destroy the men in their lives, the boys in their lives. And sometimes they don't even have to say anything. Sometimes it's just a look, a contemptuous attitude. I mean, I can tell if my wife's not happy with me just by her body language after 40 years, right? So, um, a raised eyebrow, something like that can, and literally, they have the power to destroy me, and they have power to lift them up to do things that they could never do.
But you did tell a story because you've taken these concepts, blessing with words, and
Mhm,
even we talked a little bit about how, you know, that concept of, my generation, the
mhm,
idea of being the wife behind the support person behind the husband who is the helpmate.
mhm,
That was very popular in my generation. I'm probably one of the youngest of that group that kind of
mhm.
believed that the man behind the woman or the man beside the
Right.
woman kind of thing. But then that seems to not be as popular with the Gen
Mhm.
X's and Gen Z's and the millennials.
Right.
But you're saying that it still really is very true with your words and your support. I know you mentioned something about you and your wife with even your taking the risk to take on Christian leadership, uh, of
Mhm.
spiritual leadership in your family, and how your wife. I'll let you tell it instead of me telling your
Well,
story.
yeah, like I said, I came to Christ at 40. Now, my wife had been a Christian since she was 5 years old. So, she knew way more about the Bible, way more scripture than I did. And so now I'm being told I'm supposed to be a spiritual leader in my home. Well, that's kind of a frightening thing, right? Because, men's biggest fears are to fail, to be inadequate, to be incompetent. And, I'm facing all those potentials. But the very interesting part of it was when I just showed the tiniest amount of leadership in that area, my wife and kids just fell in right behind me just gladly. It was like they were dry sponges just soaking up this, you know, healing water that they needed. And so it was very interesting to observe that and see that happen.
Well, I know, and you said too, there's power in the presence, there's power in the words. And that's one of the things too, as you illustrated, whether it's words within your own relationship, you have another type of event for women that you present to women's groups. Do you want to talk
Mhm.
about that and some of the results that you've seen from that?
Sure, and just to follow up on
Sure.
women's words, I mean, there are things that men's hearts need to hear. They need to believe that the woman that they love believes that they can go out and conquer dragons, and my wife is just so good about always telling me I'm a good man and she's proud of me, and especially since we've moved here, now we've got a little ranch. I'm like having to be all these things I've never had to be after living in the city and repairing things and building things and fixing things. And she's just beside herself that she didn't know I could do all this kind of stuff. So it's been interesting. But anyway, yeah, we do conferences for women. We do several conferences for women. One of them is for women on raising boys to be, and then one of them is based on the how to speak so your husband will listen concept. And I had an interesting thing happen at one of those conferences. It was a large group of women at a church that I was giving this conference to on that topic. And I noticed throughout the whole presentation, there was this young woman in the back just crying her eyes out. And she was, dressed in all dark clothes, really kind of goth makeup, and her mascara was running. And I was like, that is never a good thing when you're a speaker. People be crying when you're, talking. But and I'm like, I hope she doesn't come and talk to me. I hope she doesn't come and talk to me. But yeah, of course she came and talked to me, and it's like she waited till everybody else was done talking, and she was still crying, and asked her what was wrong, and she said that her husband were ready to divorce, and that she couldn't take it anymore. He wasn't coming home from work. He was going to the bar with his friends. He wouldn't go to church with them, with her and the kids. And she just was at the end of her rope. She didn't know what to do. And, I didn't know what to say to her. I mean, I'm not a counselor. I'm not a pastor. I don't know what to say to people in those situations. And really, she needed somebody to hug her and encourage her. And my wife wasn't there. That's not my role. So I don't really remember what I said to her, but she was still crying when I left. So probably, wasn't very effective. Well, about 6 months later, I was given another conference on the subject at another church, and I happened to notice her sitting in the background. And this time she wasn't crying, which was a good thing.
Good thing.
She was dressed, really nice, and so after the after the talk got over, she came up and she said, "Do you remember me?" And yeah. I said, "Yeah, I remember who you are. I remember you were crying, and I don't remember what I said to you." And she said, "Well, you told me to quit nagging my husband and to start praying for him." And I'm like, I'm pretty sure I wasn't that insensitive, right? I don't think I said that, but she goes, I go, "How'd that work?" And she goes, "Well, I was so mad at you." She goes, "But I tried everything else, so I thought I had nothing to lose." She said, "So I started praying for him every day." She said, "The first month, nothing happened." She said, "The second month, he started coming home after work." She said, "The third month, he started to going to church with us." She said, "Now he leads the men's group at church." She goes, "Our marriage was ready to be over, and now we have this great marriage." So it's just this. I think sometimes it's a perspective on the way we look at things is we can change.
Power of prayer. And I know you shared that you came to Christ at the age of 40. You didn't have that example, and somebody was praying for you, right?
Right. Yeah. My wife's grandma prayed for me for 16 years. And yeah, that's pretty honoring. And when I first went to church after I became saved, um, a friend of ours who knew my wife better than she knew me, um, we went up and told her that I came to Christ. She said, "Oh, great. Our group has been praying for you for years." I was like, I was like almost started crying because that's like, how cool is that? I don't even hardly know any of these people, and they've been praying for me for my eternal salvation. And so pretty cool.
Well, I think that's a great encouragement because in all of our groups, whether it be a church group, a small group, a prayer group, a friend group, we're all probably praying for
Yeah.
somebody.
Yeah.
And just to see that fruit, it's always great to hear
Well,
those
and to not give up. I mean, 16 years is a long time, right?
yeah.
But, my books and speaking have impacted maybe millions of people, hundreds of thousands, certainly. So,
And how God has used that and
yeah,
used our faithful prayer. I think that's
exactly.
a great encouragement, a great success story
Yeah.
for your
Yeah.
ministry.
It's not me. Trust me. I'm not, I'm not capable of doing all this stuff. So,
Well, you are capable of doing things around your ranch. I know I'm always so when my husband fixes the sprinkler head that I've run over for the umpteenth time, I'm always so grateful that he knows how to do that sort of thing. And uh, that is that kind of that great thing that men can do.
yeah.
I think we'd be remiss if we left without you do have some resources and a conference that you lead for women and their sons. And it kind of is particularly really getting for those single moms to
Yeah.
be that support for them. And I think you had some important things to say there.
Yeah, well, we do a single moms. We haven't done it since COVID, but we do a single moms conference, and it's for all their kids, boys and girls, because girls need positive male role models too. And basically, we bring them out to a 3-day conference for free, have lodging for them, and We do some very powerful talks to the moms, kind of pull some scabs off some wounds, if you will, and we not only do that, but we also honor them in several different ways. Um, on one of the, I think Saturday morning, we have a spa day, bring in people who volunteer to do haircuts, manicures, pedicures, all the kinds of things that single moms generally can't afford to do. Um, and it's good for the kids to see their moms being honored, because I think a lot of times um, single moms aren't honored. They don't see that a lot. While this whole time is going on, the kids are basically playing with a group of male volunteers, playing games, doing all kinds of stuff. Boys are building birdhouses with them, being able to hammer stuff, fishing. All the kids are fishing. Just some fun stuff. Uh, Saturday night, we'll have a big bonfire. Usually, we'll bring in a high school youth group from a local church. They can play with the kids, do skits. It's because it's important for the kids to see that you can have fun and be a Christian, because that's not often the message that they're hearing or seeing.
Yeah.
And so, roasting marshmallows, roasting hot dogs, all that kind of stuff, and having fun with these high school kids, that can really speak into the heart of these boys and girls probably a lot better than I can. So, yeah, it's a very powerful event. Again, a lot of very cool stuff. But all that stuff takes resources, especially since we've moved to a new area. Resources are not been established yet, so we're hoping to be able to partner with some people to put these back on again.
Yeah, well,
The moms need help out there, so.
it sounds like that's a wonderful, and I in that message too, you had a special message to the women about letting their boys, not coddling their boys, and I that resonated with me as a mom of two sons. Could you say that? Tell
Well,
us that.
yeah, I think moms, single moms especially, but maybe all moms, tend to rescue their sons maybe more than they should. Single moms do particularly. Um, the problem is that, first of all, boys develop, especially boys, maybe girls, I don't know, but especially boys develop self-esteem, healthy self-esteem, by trying something, failing, getting up and persevering until they succeed. Well, when they're rescued too easily, that circumvents that whole process. Um, the problem is, boys who learn to be rescued by mom also quit easily. Um, Boys who learn to quit become men who learn to quit. Some of the hardest things in life are some of the best things in life. Having a family, raising kids, those things, working at a job you hate to feed your family. Those things are important. Those things are powerful. But boys and men who have learned to quit, what happens the first time marriage gets tough? They quit, they leave. First time raising a family gets tough, they leave. Working at a job they hate to feed their family, they quit. And it's because that's what they've been programmed to do. So that's one of the things that we work with moms a lot on, is helping them to recognize that it doesn't do their sons any good to rescue them too easily. The funny part is that you'll hear daughters say all the time that their moms allow their brothers to get away with stuff they would never allow their daughters to get away with. So, moms need to be aware of that.
Well, I think that is really powerful, and a really good insight for people raising children, whether boys or girls, whether single moms or not, to really embrace that opportunity of teaching your kids not to quit. And
Mhm.
one of the ways to do that is not rescuing. And that goes
Right.
back kind of to what we are saying about building those sons to become the husbands and fathers, giving them that roadmap, helping in all, like your 11 books really cover a gamut of different relationships of the family. But
Right.
yeah, they all go back to the heart of that.
Yeah.
So
Well, 12 books. I got my 13th coming out in February, but um,
wonderful.
nevertheless, yeah, it's interesting when I talk to men who were raised by single moms. Generally, the men that are good men all pretty much say the same thing. They say, "My mom was tough on us. She didn't put up with a lot of nonsense. She had pretty strict boundaries that she adhered to." So it's interesting that moms' hearts want to do the very thing, the opposite of what is really the best for their sons in particular.
Well, but being and again, it all goes back to whether it's the man or the woman, the husband or the wife, the father and the mother, that presence, that speaking those words into others' hearts. And,
Absolutely.
and we are so glad, Rick. Thank you so much for being here today.
Oh,
It was just
my
a pleasure
pleasure.
talking with you. It just
Yeah,
time just went by like that.
you're great. Thank you. I appreciate the opportunity to be on your program.
Well, we are glad to have you. And Marriage Champions, you can always find Rick or any of our other resources at samarriage.org.